boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Chantel Cameron, ahead of her MVP debut this weekend, says, "I feel the good times are about to happen again." Chantel Cameron, in this modern day and age, the old adage, a happy fighter is a dangerous fighter, quote, gets rolled out far too often. It is an overused phrase, but there are times when it impeccably applies. An accurate assessment of where a fighter is in their career, it could quite easily apply to Chantel Cameron right now. But maybe more accurately, Cameron is a fighter at peace, at least in some ways. Yes, there is unfinished business with Katie Taylor. That story has been well told, one win apiece, a trilogy that, if money is kept out of the narrative, makes far more sense than one we will get in just a week's time at MSG. Ironically, the same date and location where Cameron will make her next ring walk. Cameron wants Taylor again. I'm not sure Taylor or her team want Cameron again. There lies the problem. But elsewhere, with things that she can control, Cameron has found peace. That inner peace comes with happiness, and as that old saying goes, it makes her a dangerous fighter.
What would it take to get Katie Taylor back in the ring with Chantel?
I think a part of it would be sealing the deal against Amanda Serrano for a third time. I think it would take for Katie Taylor to beat Amanda, keep her undisputed crown, and it would take for Netflix, I think, to put up the money.
MVP.
Because remember that they promote Chantel Cameron now. The career of Chantel Cameron hasn't always been this way. A fighter often swimming against the tide. A fighter searching for the limelight and the attention that often went elsewhere. But finally the stars have aligned, and Cameron appears to have found what she has been looking for the past 18 months or so. Maybe even longer than that.
She was never really happy at Matchroom, playing second fiddle to Katie Taylor, even though Matchroom got her to every major fight she's ever had, including the Taylor fights. Every title, she wasn't happy over there.
And even after she left Matchroom, 2024 was a disappointing year for the former undisputed world super lightweight champion. The big fights were not available. A year of staying busy, staying relevant, trying to force down doors that were seemingly always slammed shut in her face.
What doors were those? Because she got the Katie Taylor fight, she got two of those fights.
Chantel then left Matchroom, tried to make things work with a new promoter and a new trainer. It just didn't work out for her. There was no bitterness or malice when Cameron sought pastures anew, an amicable parting of ways, a mutual split that was full of class and more. If 2024 wasn't what Cameron would have hoped for, 2025 could be everything and more. A new promoter, a new trainer, the Northampton fighter suddenly found hope when all was lost. Cameron is now promotionally aligned with Jake Paul and his MVP, where others have lost interest. Paul has seen something else. An investment of time and money that couldn't have come at a better time for the female side of the sport. Has Jake Paul saved women's boxing? Maybe not, but it might not be that much of a stretch to say that he has.
Oh, so?
Jake Paul is signing almost every available female talent. It's some stable of fighters. It will only get bigger and better. Where not so long ago, Chantel Cameron couldn't find a meaningful fight, that most certainly isn't the case now. She is in the land of make-believe no longer.
Well, she got quite a few meaningful fights at Matchroom, but she decided to leave anyway. They're the ones that put her in the McCaskill fight. They're the ones that put her in the two Katie Taylor fights.
Despite everything that Jake Paul and his profile bring to the table, it's the hookup with Stephen Smith that in many ways is the missing piece of Cameron's boxing jigsaw. Every fighter needs that special bond and that unwavering trust in their partner. They need and crave that one-to-one connection. Cameron has that and a whole lot more. I have a coach who is making me want to be a world champion again. I want to give it to Stephen just as much as I want it for myself. Her period of drifting along somewhat is now over, but bear in mind that this isn't the first
or the second time that Chantel Cameron has hired a new training team.
A new trainer. Many years ago at the start of her career, she was with Shane McGuigan. Then she left Shane, ended up with Nigel Travis and Jamie Moore. Then for whatever reason, she left them.
I forgot who it was for, but whoever that was, she's now left that trainer and she's with Stephen Smith.
So that makes 4 by my count. There were thoughts of retirement not so long ago. They were, in truth, born out of sheer frustration. You can only swim but so much, drowning in the politics of a sport that hasn't always treated her well. But those tentative thoughts of walking away have now been replaced by thoughts of revenge and adding more world titles to an already incredibly impressive resume. Cameron returns on Friday, July 11th at Madison Square Garden on the undercard of a great rival, running it back with Amanda Serrano for a third time. It is the deepest and greatest all-female card that we have ever seen. Cameron defends her WBC interim World Super Lightweight title against Jessica Camara, a supporting role this time, but Cameron hopes she will be the main act next time. The odds say that in some way, shape, or form, she will be. If Taylor beats Serrano for a third time, Cameron says the WBC will insist that Taylor fights her next or vacate the title. Taylor might have control over her future. She could even retire. But either way, Cameron should have a world title fight at 140 before this year is out. Cameron will hope the Jake Paul effect and his wealth can do enough to tempt Taylor back for a trilogy.
You know that's what I think Chantel's problem is? Underneath it all, she made the focus and the focal point of her entire boxing career Katie Taylor.
A Serrano victory might complicate things somewhat, but Cameron will still be in a pole position regardless. Now that I have signed with MVP, I think the big fights will now happen for me. Cameron told me when the hookup with Paul and MVP was formally announced, it was a barren wilderness in 2024, but now everything is different for Cameron.
Not really. Not if you're still making the centerpiece of your entire boxing career Katie Taylor. Because what if she loses, or what if she wins, but she retires? Do you retire alongside her?
So in the past year, Chantel Cameron contemplated retirement, but didn't contemplate moving up to 147 for a Sandy Ryan fight, a Michaela Mayer fight, a Lauren Price fight.
Those are big fights too. Those are good fights too.
Though perhaps not as big and not as good as a Katie Taylor fight, those fights are still good fights. But therein lies the dilemma, that it seems to me Chantel is placing far too much emphasis on pursuing one fight with one fighter who just so happens to be at the tail end of her career.
Katie Taylor.
Who's pretty much fought damn near everyone already. So you were thinking about retiring at 33 or 34 years old. Katie's almost 40.
Pretty sure it's crossed her mind.
Like I said, I think Chantel has far too much riding on a Katie Taylor fight and not enough riding on the rest of these divisions and the rest of these fighters, the rest of her career. Because what happens if she can't get that Katie Taylor trilogy?
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, disgraced boxer Ryan Garcia says, I wouldn't mind fighting Devin Haney at the White House.
Likely his reaction to the news that the UFC may be holding an event at the White House for President Donald Trump next year. Ryan says that he would like to do something like that.
Yeah, John Jones may be ending his retirement so soon after it started to take on Tom Aspinall. That's what the rumor mill is spinning.
Ryan's reaction to that is he would like a similar arrangement to run it back with Devin Haney, but bear in mind that Oscar De La Hoya, who still promotes Ryan, put off any idea that there should be a second fight, that there should be a rematch, and we know that Devin has already moved on.
Yeah, he's supposed to be fighting Brian Norman in the fall.
This indecision from Ryan Garcia, this resident indecisiveness that seems to be a constant with today's younger generation.
What do you mean indecisive?
Remember immediately after the first Devin Haney fight, everybody at Golden Boy blew off the idea that there should be a rematch, even Ryan.
They didn't want to give Devin one. Then comes Turkey LL Sheik and convinces them to do it, but Ryan drops the ball.
He loses to Rolly. Now the recommendation he's making is that he should box Devin Haney at the White House.
Maybe what you need to do is run it back with Rolly.
But that's what he said not but a few days ago, this month, last month.
Indecision.
Ryan stated, I may have voted for Donald Trump, but I can't stay silent about what's happening with ICE in Los Angeles. These aren't just illegals or statistics. They're people, hardworking immigrants, especially Mexicans who pay taxes, raise families, build our communities, and are part of the people we love. Ripping them away from their homes is not just policy, It's pain. We can have borders without losing our humanity.
So last month he was critical of how Donald Trump is handling the migrant situation so that this month he could try to box for him at the White House?
Make up your goddamn mind. The recent arrest of Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. by ICE and subsequent extradition back across the border has brought all of this into the boxing space. We know that the migrant situation is a hot-button topic within the political sphere, but now it's found its way into the boxing sphere.
Donald's hardline stance on the migrant crisis is a big part of the reason that so many people voted for him.
Ryan Garcia himself admits to voting for him, but now he regrets it?
Why?
Outside looking in, I don't think there's a middle ground for the people on the right and the people on the left because they've got wildly contrasting views. On the right, you've got people that feel the laws should be upheld. And if you're entering into the country illegally, well, you've already broken the law.
You've got to go.
It's what the people on the right think, whereas what the people on the left think...
I guess they think that this country is intended to provide refuge for anyone and everyone, even people that break the law to come here.
That's what they think. What I think is that 4 years of the previous administration exacerbated what was already a hot-button topic within the political sphere, because things at the border were a lot more laxed during the Biden administration, to the point where Americans were regularly hearing about Venezuelan street gangs setting up shop in major cities across the country, commandeering buildings and neighborhoods in Aurora, Colorado, and robbing people at gunpoint, beating up police officers in New York City.
How do you imagine that made many Americans feel?
These are the kind of people you're giving sanctuary, Sleepy Joe. Criminals. Is there no oversight? These are the kind of people tax dollars are going to house them in hotels and give them weekly or monthly allowance cards, or whatever it was. As you can imagine, there were many Americans that were not okay with what was going on at the border, and thus...
They voted for Donald because they knew he wouldn't have it. They knew that if they get him back in office, he'll put a stop to all that, which is what he's doing.
So they got what they voted for. Illegal immigration has been a hot-button topic in this country for as long as I can remember, but the last 4 years during that administration, it was further exacerbated.
So now, some folks that might have wanted nothing more than the opportunity to earn a clean, honest living in the land of opportunity are caught in the crossfire of the mess that the Democrats left behind.
Democrats whose token idealism doesn't offer very many real-world solutions to what is an obvious problem. Or is it that they believe that this country shouldn't have borders?
What?
I wonder how many of them sleep with their doors wide open, allowing just any old body to come in, that they expect that to be the policy for the border in this country.
I'll bet they don't.
They don't sleep with their doors open to allow any old riffraff to walk right into their house, but for whatever reason, they think that's supposed to be the policy for this country's border.
This is what Ryan Garcia's playing a violin about.
Whilst saying that he would like to box at the White House for Donnie J. You gotta make up your mind, Ryan.
My thoughts.
Ryan was very vocal about his support of Donnie J leading up to his second term, but right now he's feeling the pinch, and he's gotta know how unpopular that might make him in the Mexican-American community, among those who don't like what Donnie's doing to all of those migrants. He knows that in his sport, his profession, the Mexican-American dollar...
Mexicans move the needle.
But what do you imagine they think of you for supporting him?
Can't have it both ways.
And so he is seemingly straddling the fence. Yeah, I support Donnie, I just don't support what he's doing.
What is he doing? Upholding the law? Securing the border in all the ways that the Democratic Party didn't?
It's no fantasy that a good number of criminals crossed that border. Many of them became criminals simply by crossing that border. But some of them were criminals already, like Julio Cesar Chavez, who is now said to be an enforcer for the Sinaloa cartel. He entered into this country with an existing warrant for his arrest in Mexico in connection with weapons manufacturing and trafficking.
This is the kind of riffraff that got in during the Biden administration. The kind of riffraff that is now being kicked out.
He was here for an entire year with an expired tourist's visa, all during the Biden administration. It took for Donnie J to take office for them to take him out.
Send him back.
So it's not a secret that during the Biden administration, there was little to no oversight as to who exactly were they letting in here.
Is it supposed to be a crime against humanity that a sovereign nation secures its border?
Is America not allowed to have one? And are Americans not allowed to uphold the laws of their country and want to preserve their own culture? For a perspective, right now, south of the border, rioters in Mexico demand that Americans stop immigrating to their country and stop, quote-unquote, stealing their homes.
Except they're not entering into the country illegally, and they're not actually stealing their homes, they're buying them.
You can't make this up. Locals are fuming that Americans are imposing their culture and taking over. Some went as far as to say gringos should be killed, while others told them to get out of Mexico.
Now, could you imagine if Donnie J stood at the pulpit and said that Mexicans should be killed?
Since COVID, American digital nomads have been flocking to Mexico City. Mexico City is going through a transformation. There are a lot of foreigners, namely Americans, coming to live there, said one local.
Gente que viene de otros países, en su mayoría extranjeros, a querer imponer su cultura, sus precios y desplazar a los mexicanos, a los nativos de estas tierras.
Vengo porque la gentrificación solo es un paso más a la colonización, a los despojos y a que exploten nuestros recursos.
Signs called for stricter housing and tourism regulations. Demonstrators spoke out against wealthy digital nomads driving up prices.
Particularly Americans who can stay in Mexico for at least 180 days without a visa, but bear in mind that these are not people entering into the country illegally or violating any of its laws. They're going through due process.
They're being accused of gentrifying Mexico City. They're being called colonizers because they're going where they're not wanted.
Oh, you mean like they've been doing here for years?
How's this work? Rules for thee, but not for me. If a sovereign nation reserves its right to secure its borders and expel any rule breakers that may have entered into the country illegally, that is a crime against humanity.
But when those same sentiments are turned towards Americans who didn't break the rules, who didn't enter into their country illegally,
What, is that supposed to be fair? Then it becomes painfully apparent that it's not fairness that the people on the left are after. Those people don't know what they're after. They don't know what they want.
that's why there's never anything sustainable or realistic about their perspectives.
Political IQ. The people south of the border don't like being encroached upon any more than the Americans do. But why are the Americans the only ones being held to some sort of moral high ground?
Double standards.